So welcome everybody to The Changing Marketplace. This is the fifth in the Intentional Success series here in 2017. We have one more webinar in this series that we'll talk about in just a little bit. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join me today. But most importantly, I want to thank the sponsors of avmatters.com. These are the folks that help cover the expenses of putting these things on, maintaining this website, getting the monthly AV Matters newsletter out, which is chock full of content that I help produce. Nationwide Wholesale Video Rentals, wonderful folks. They've been a sponsor for a long time. AV Schnuffle USA, Flex Rental Solutions, Digital Projection Inc., the great folks at Complete Crewing, DWP Live, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of them at upcoming events, and we'll talk about some of those things very, very shortly. So thank you, sponsors. It really does make a difference. Folks, please take a few moments, learn about these companies because they care about the community that you're in. Right, so I'm your presenter, as always, Tom Stimson, president of the Stimson Group. I've been in the AV industry, I can now say, for 35 years. And that just makes me feel incredibly old. So please understand, I started when I was 7. You can learn all about me at my pages, Facebook page, YouTube, LinkedIn. It shouldn't be hard to find me. So let's get on to the webinar because I'm excited. This is good stuff. I'm excited about what we're talking about today. I've been standing here for 20 minutes waiting to start. So I'm glad we're finally at the moment where we can move forward. Today we're going to talk about techniques for assessing your economic forecast and what to do with them. Right now, it's October 2017. You should be seriously deep in what your 2018 is going to look like. You should be doing budgets, you should be doing forecasts, and you should be figuring out how you're going to meet those forecasts. I'm also going to talk about 5 big trends you need to consider for 2018, things that I personally believe are going to affect your 2018 outlook and that you should think about as you're planning your forecast for next year. And then if you'll hang with me till the end after I make some great announcements, an announcement I think you're going to like, I'm going to give you some forecasting techniques. Forecasting is actually something I'm proud to say I'm pretty darn good at. I did it for many, many years quite successfully. And I'll tell you a story about forecasting here in just a minute. So, I told you I'd ask you a question, and I want you to think about this. Right now, if I ask you, hey, what are the trends you're seeing in the industry? Something comes to mind. So while you're sitting there listening to me, thinking about that, scratch something down and type it in the Q&A box. Type in a trend that you're seeing in the industry. And even if you think we all know what that trend is, type it in, because trends have weight. And the more of you who think something, the more it's going to matter. So, hey, I've already got a couple up here. Thank you, guys. Keep popping some trends in there, and we'll talk about some of those in just a minute. We all have to have a certain ability to look in a crystal ball. And talking about the changing marketplace, we have to think about what is changing. Very often I talk to owners and sales managers, and I say, tell me what's going to happen next year. And they say, we're going to grow 5% or we're going to grow 10%. And I'll ask, well, why do you think that? Well, we always grow 10%. Well, no, they don't, because most of the companies I'm talking to haven't actually grown in years. They have good years and bad years. So the lack of change would be a change. The marketplace is always changing, but customers aren't necessarily changing. You're not necessarily changing. We have to look at all the things that are going on and decide which ones affect us. Everything changes in some way. Some matter more than others. And if we ignore these things, we will, 1, miss opportunities, and 2, be surprised. Now, there's folks on this call right now who will remember this. Back in 2001, and I've been doing forecasting for several years at that point, and most of my forecasts have been easy. Oh my goodness, all the indicators were growth, 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 growth. And the company I worked for, of course, grew dramatically through the 90s. We had one of the most stellar growth curves that I've seen in our business to date. And then all of a sudden, 2001, after a record-breaking year, we go into 2000, we had a record-breaking year. In 2001, I'm doing the forecast, and for the first time in years, all of a sudden, what I could see 5 months out had changed. It wasn't the same. And it turned, I mean, all these alarms started going off in my head. What am I missing here? I was looking, it was in March, and I'm looking at September, and normally I have a certain amount of business in my pipeline, and all of a sudden, that business wasn't there. It was off 50, maybe even 75%. I got nervous, and I went to my boss, I went to the owner and said, this doesn't look right. What are you seeing? And we started comparing notes and looking at other trends and talking to other people, talking to clients, and we realized that we had spotted a downturn. Now, as we all know, in hindsight, a recession had just started at the end of 2000. You don't know that a recession has started until it's been going for a while. So we were in a recession. Our core clients who are more plugged into the economy than we are were already reacting to it, which means they weren't hiring our clients, which means our pipeline was shrinking. Just the simple act of looking ahead and looking for these things makes a huge difference. We did some pullback at that time, and the story never ends well on these things, because if you also remember, 2001 was the 9/11 here in the U.S., where the live events industry took a major dump. So while we predicted and made adjustments for a downturn, none of us could have prepared for the devastation in the economy that was created by 9/11. So thank goodness we had already made some adjustments, because we weren't hurt as badly as we could have been. But that's my forecasting story. We forecast because you don't know what you're going to find. Another message I'm going to give you here before we get deeper is that data points are not trends. A very common data point, and integrators live this much more than live event guys. Live event people tend to have a lot of recurring business, and then they have these big one-off events, these outlier things, and those are not data points. When somebody says, well, we're not going to have as good a year this coming year because this big show that we did is not recurring. In the integration world, most of the projects they do are one-offs. They have some recurring business, regular customers, maintenance agreements, but people aren't rebuilding their meeting rooms or their conference centers every year. So they're affected differently by trends than live event folks are. So don't get caught up on a data point. A piece of data is not a trend. We need to look at a whole bunch of data points, and we need to check moods, because people are affected by the data points they're seeing. They may not understand where their mood comes from, but they're collecting their mood from a number of places. So why trends? So we all react to them. Whether we know it or not, we're reacting to things and data that we're seeing. Clients are reacting to them. Often our clients are better at spotting trends and reacting to them than we are. Now, clever companies, and the reason for this webinar and the reason we're having this conversation today is that we need to be more clever. Trends are findable. Trends have weight. Some trends are more important than others, and so they're weighable. And if you can spot a trend, chances are you can leverage it. Right now, there's a trend in the projection world, and remember 4 years ago, people were saying projectors were going to be dead, everything was going to be direct view displays. And yet here we have projector companies thriving right now, because large format projectors, anything from conference on up, are converting from lamps to laser. So this is a trend. How can you leverage that trend? Well, there's a lot of advantages to laser. That's a very leverageable trend when you go back to your customers and talk about the benefits. And if you're not able to take advantage of that trend, in other words, you're not able to invest into the laser projector phenomenon, then you can prepare for the consequences and mitigate not being able to participate in the trend. Now, I want to stop for a moment. I want to bring up some of the things that some of you folks have typed in, of trends you're seeing, and let's just get a little mood of who's on the audience today. Here, I'll just go from the top here. I'm seeing integrator consolidation. Yes, we're seeing a lot of M&A activity, and we'll talk about that. I'm seeing LED screens replacing projection, okay? Another comment here about LED walls. Last minute confirmations. I hear a lot of folks talking about the ever shorter timelines, and after 35 years, timelines have been continually getting shorter. So maybe we should stop being surprised by that. I have a comment here about more move towards hotel exclusivity. Very concerning. Yep, that is a trend. Cloud off-premise solutions, good. Software as a service, that's an important trend. Another comment here about more use of LED screens are becoming more prevalent. More projection mapping, awesome. Digital signage explosion and direct lit LED, okay. Another comment here about no longer dealing with event planners. We're now working with a marketing group. So there's been a change in the supply chain, the value chain. This person is saying that their channel is less event planners, and they're working more directly with marketing groups within the client organization or as an independent contractor. So interesting trends there. And let's see, I got one more here about houses of worship cutting out integrators and buying online. Okay, yeah. So there's a trend. So there's reduced barriers to entry to the things that we do. Where I first heard the term trunk slammer in the early 90s. I'm still hearing it. But now trunk slammers are very sophisticated because they're helping their clients buy online and bypass some of the channels that are maybe not adding enough value to be relevant. So these are all important trends. We can't necessarily change them, but we can take note of them because it might affect what we do. Great, thank you. Thank you everybody for sharing those. Okay. Now, how are you as an organization, as a company, going to make an assessment of the changing marketplace? We just heard a bunch of things that you may or may not have noticed. I'm going to share a few more with you. But we're going to do some simple self-assessments. And the first thing we're going to do is ask some questions. And I sent out a survey probably back in September, if I know me, asking some questions about trends, which you guys generously shared your thoughts about. And this survey will be available for you to download along with the handout from this webinar on av-matters.com, not long after this event is over today. So the question I want to ask is, as we look at these trends, I want you to ask yourself how they make you feel about 2018. Okay? Are you concerned to optimistic? So here's a self-assessment that you can do right now. I'll put this on the screen. I'll give you a quick chance to do a self-assessment yourself, and then we'll look at some of the survey questions I sent out. So looking at these items here, how do you feel right now? Are you concerned about your pipeline, neutral or optimistic about your pipeline in 2018? How do you feel about lead times? Are lead times concerning you, or do they make you optimistic? Do your margins concern you? Do they make you optimistic? What about world news? Does world news make you concerned or optimistic? National news, local news. What's going on in your personal life? Because yes, that affects business. Okay. How do you feel about your staff? Does your staff make you optimistic for 2018 or concerned? What about your client mix? Okay. Concerned or optimistic? So this is your self-assessment. So before you start deciding how you're going to approach 2018 and arbitrarily say we're going to grow 10% and then chunk all those numbers into a spreadsheet and cross your fingers, ask yourself some questions and see how you feel. Now, that's an internal look. I got another set of questions about looking externally. Okay, so I'm going to give you some business conditions, and I want you to ask yourself, how do you perceive your competition in a broad sense? Is your competition weak or strong? Okay, and then later on, you can discuss which of these matter most to your customers. So when you're thinking about your product offerings, are you weak or are you strong compared to your competition? What about your service offerings? How about your margins? Are your margins weak or strong compared to the competition? How much marketing effort are you putting in? Do you feel like you're keeping up, you're at the lead, or you're behind? Do you have a weak or a strong business strategy compared to the competition? What about brand conversation? When you talk to customers, do you talk about your brand as well as your competition talks about their brand? Is your technical aptitude good? It may have been great 5 years ago, but what about today? What about going into 2018? Do you feel strong? What about your execution? How well are you delivering? Your client mix, right, compared to your competitors. If your competitors have a more diverse client mix, does that make you feel weak or strong? And again, we ask about staff. How does your staff compare to the competition? Do they make you feel more strong or maybe a little bit weak? So we want to have a sense of which of these things are important to your customers. So that's your discussion point. After you go through and kind of rate yourself, what matters to your customers that you can change? What can you change of these things? Now, I got one last set of these questions, and it's about what you can change. Of the things that you can exert some control over on this following list, which will have the greatest effect on growth? So in terms of growth, in terms of your growth, will your product offerings have a low, medium, or high effect on your potential for growth? What about your service offerings? Do your margins affect your ability to grow? How much, low, medium, or high? Is your marketing effort going to affect it? Your business strategy? The types of brand conversations you're having? Is this going to have a low or medium or a high impact on what you're doing? Your technical aptitude, your execution, your client mix, your staff. How much are these things going to affect your growth? Are they going to have a high effect or are they going to have a low effect? And therefore, which things should I act upon? So if something's going to have a high impact on your growth, that's probably something that I can work on and take advantage of. If something's having a low impact on my growth, but it should have an high impact, that tells me where I might want to put some extra energy. Right? So look at the outliers, look at the extremes. How can I leverage my advantages and how can I mitigate my weaknesses? Now, so you've done a little bit of a self-assessment here, and once you get the handout, you can probably go through this in more detail. But now I need some more data. Now I need to kind of look outside and find out what the rest of the world is thinking about. So I'm still getting some comments on trends here. This is great. I've got another AV moving to networking. It's not about to happen. It has happened. Thank you. Thank you, person, for recognizing that the battle for AV and IT has been over for years. All right, so let's get some more data here. So I sent this survey out. I'm sorry, I launched this, talked about this a little bit early in the presentation. I sent the survey out in September. I asked this question: in your opinion, how will 2018 compare overall economically to 2017? In other words, how does the rest of my community, my peers, feel about the potential of 2018? And the interesting thing here, as you can see, is that 48% of the people responding expect an increase. So half the audience expects an increase, 30% expects it to be the same. So there's only a very few number of people who are expecting things to drop, or say expecting a slowdown. So that's a pretty positive feel, but it's just a data point, right? So I don't want to go, oh, hey, great, we're going to have a great year next year, just like I said we would, because everybody else thinks the same way I do. That's not how it works. So you look at the comments. So when you get a survey, especially when you get one of my surveys, don't just look at the data results, look at the comments that go with it. And I get a lot of comments. You guys are great about sharing your thoughts. And here's a couple of comments. This person says it feels like a bubble right now. Markets are sky high. Companies are spending money like water. My gut says it can't remain the same. There's a lot of folks that feel that we are in a bubble. It is about to burst. The question is when. And then here's another comment that says the economy seems to have a solid underpinning with a steady, albeit slow growth. We should sit back and enjoy this. So you read through these things and you use this information to help better formulate your ideas, better express your ideas, because you're going to have to make a choice about how you move forward. Here's the next question we asked. In your opinion, how will your response to question number 1 affect live events and or production rental segments in terms of revenue? And sorry, integrators, this mostly went to live events folks, but you can interpolate your responses based on this. So the live events community says 50% said they expect an increase in revenue in 2018 based on the things that they're saying. 28% expect the same. Very few people expect a downturn. So for one particular segment, it's even more positive about their business than they are about the economy overall. Now, is that unwarranted optimism? Or is there something else going on that's contributing to the spending in that segment? Now, some of the comments here, with the consolidation of large production companies into mega production companies, the margins on shows will take a beating. So while business may be going up, the margins are going down because there's reduced competition. I'm not sure I agree with that statement, but it's important because I think a lot of people believe that the consolidation of competitors means that your margin is going to take a beating because perhaps they can afford a lower margin to win business. Don't know. Another comment, much of our business is cyclical spending and will likely see significant cuts. So here's the negative side of what's otherwise an optimistic report. Right. Now, there's more of the results. When you go to pick up this webinar, you can have the entire thing. There's 2 more questions on there and hundreds of responses. So you can really drill down, get a lot of opinions. Some of you are quite opinionated and rather colorful. So I know you'll enjoy reading through those and help you formulate your opinion about what 2018 is going to do for you. Now, what are you going to do with this stuff? First and foremost, the reason we're having this webinar is that you need to form your 2018 sales pipeline. You need to decide, one, how much is it going to yield? And if, depending on what the yield is, how can you affect that yield? In other words, we all know how a pipeline works. A pipeline is big at the top and small at the bottom, and the bottom's where the revenue is. So how do you make your pipeline work better for you? And how are these trends going to affect it? For instance, we see in the comments people talking about the increasing demand for LED is, do you need to work on the top of your pipeline by talking more about LED, offering more LED products and services, making that part of the conversation, making that part of your brand promise, and driving more business down to the revenue side. Another way you apply trends, of course, is through your marketing content and promotions. Marketing people, many of whom are not actually from our industry and don't know how to read the field like those of us who've been around for a really long time do, need our perspective. So we need to help our marketing team or our marketing providers understand the trends that we're seeing and what that might mean for 2018, because that will affect what you should be promoting and what you should be talking about in your content. You know, knowing that 2018, for instance, if you believe that 2018 is going to be a horrible year, that we're going to see the bubble burst on the stock market, we're going to see the beginnings of a recession, well, wouldn't it make sense to change your marketing now? Because you need to be able to capture market share in order to survive. You need to be willing to take lower margins and retain market share so that when that recession is over, you're in a position to thrive again. You need a plan. Now's the time to do it. If we're looking at trends, particularly if I'm a rental company, I'm doing investment planning. Now, any business owner, they're going, well, is this the right year to buy a new building? You know, real estate prices are kind of high, but if I wait any longer, they're going to get higher unless I think they're going to fall. Should I buy a new line of laser projectors and replace my old lamp projectors in my rental inventory? Should I invest in LED? Should I buy more wireless mics? Should I train my install technicians to work on structural installations of LED walls? Should I teach them how to weld? I mean, all of these things are investments in your company, but the trends will tell you what you might need to do. And then, of course, hiring priorities. Do I maintain the staff I have? Do I let attrition take hold? Or do I need to hire up? Right. Now I want to share 5 trends, and some of this is going to be a little bit off the wall because, well, you know how I roll. But there's 5 trends I think you should consider. Some of which you've touched on in your ideas about trends. First trend I want to bring up is Avixa. And for those of you who don't know, Avixa used to be called Infocom. Infocom has rebranded the association to Avixa, the Audio-Visual Integrated Experiences Association. And I've written a blog piece on that. You can go to my website or LinkedIn and read about that. There's lots of discussion out there about this. I think this is hugely important, and I think you need to pay attention to it. As somebody alluded to in the Q&A here about, you know, the battle of IT and AV being over, Infocom changing their name to Avixa and refocusing their branding efforts is an acknowledgement that yes, indeed, it is over, and AV still stands. AV is still important. It may not control the network, but it's still vitally important to the people that use that. So AV is. So watch some of the stuff that Infocom has put out about this, read some of the blog posts, but I'm very excited about what Avixa means to us as AV people. Everybody out here is an AV person. Now we actually have a professional association, a trade association and professional society that is clearly behind us, that's not named after a trade show. This is enormous. So you can talk to your clients about how you do professional development through Avixa. What you do is validated by Avixa. And oh, by the way, you have this great trade show that you go to, which is still called Infocom. So look at, and if you study what Infocom has done to become Avixa, you'll see a great lesson in well-executed marketing. All right, another trend you should consider: affinity groups. You know, the PSNIs, the AV alliances, the rental staging networks. These groups that many of your companies belong to are growing by leaps and bounds. And in my observation, they're becoming much, much more effective than they've been in the past. There are some international groups that are helping companies that are already quite large look even larger, increasing the footprint. More and more of our business is becoming global, even on the live event side. And having an international footprint, a worldwide footprint, is important. So if you're not part of these affinity groups, be prepared to have a strategic disadvantage when you're going against companies that are. Because they've taken steps to elevate their credibility in the marketplace, and that might affect you. You may need to choose some other things to elevate your credibility. Not to say that their credibility is less valuable, but you need to be credible perhaps in other areas to counter that. So pay attention to what these affinity groups are doing, because it's going to affect your business whether you're in it or not. You know, when I started planning on my leap to the consulting career in the early 2000s, I started writing about the death of the detailed quote. I didn't put it in these terms, but I talked about writing scope of work proposals. And I am so happy now that I almost never find detailed quotes, line item quotes in my new clients. I'm onboarding new clients all the time who have not done a line item quote for years. They're writing scope of work quotes. They're selling broadly. They're not commoditizing their business. I love it. It's fantastic. However, the 50% of folks out there who still rely on detailed quotes, who still sell from the line item, need to pay attention. This is a trend. Now, I happen to think it's a good trend. You may not. I know that in some parts of the international world, they don't like this trend at all, and they're actively working against it. I think it's a great trend, but whether you do or not, it does affect your business. How are you going to respond to it? How will it affect your business in 2018? Full service, creative, and support. This is not just a live events trend. You know, when digital signage started to really become a thing 10 years ago, my first response to that was, it's all about the content. And any integration company that sells into the digital signage market would be foolish if it didn't go after the content, because the content's where the money's going to be. And I believe I was proven correct, because the integration side of digital signage became very commoditized very quickly. Now, on the live events side, we had the same phenomenon. More and more live events, event production companies are doing full service creative and support, and even more are looking at why they should be doing that now. So it's an important trend. I'm seeing changes in how buyers look at companies and what they're valuing and what they're willing to listen to. So the typical phone call I'm going to get is, oh, we've been doing this show for 10 years, and all of a sudden the client's putting it out to bid, and they're going to full service companies. And I said, well, yeah, more of that's going to happen. So go look at all of your other longtime clients and weigh, trends are weighable, weigh the likelihood of them going to a full service creative and support source. And then another trend that I've seen, and I wrote a whole bunch of these, but these were the 5 that I think have the most impact in 2018, is software as a service tools for small business. I mean, when I tour somebody's office and they show me the server closet, my heart kind of sinks. I feel like I've gone back to the 20th century, but I'm still seeing that out there. And as I work with more companies and younger companies, and as my suppliers become younger, I'm finding that 99% of what we do in business can be served through software as a service tools more effectively than the standalone applications that we have traditionally used. If it's affecting us as small businesses, imagine, this impact, this trend has come and gone on our client side. Okay? The cloud, software as a service, subscription-based software, having to pay for software every year instead of owning it forever. This is the norm for our clients. It's becoming the norm for us as well. And it's finally, I think it's going to turn the corner in 2018 and become ubiquitous. If you sell standalone software instead of software as a service, I would be very concerned right now. Now, fun stuff. So, how am I going to use all this? If I were in an organization, what would I do with the things that we're talking about here today? And it's an open conversation. Michael Porter, who's the grandfather of all business consulting, business thinking, strategy, said that there are three generic strategies. You have a cost leadership strategy, a differentiation strategy, and a focus strategy. And no one has proven that to not be true. There are derivatives of that, there are variations on that, there are subcategories of that, but the fact is, every one of us has chosen one of these things for our businesses, whether we did it intentionally or not. So you need to have an open discussion about what opportunities are in front of you based on the trends that you're seeing, trends that you believe, trends that you have weighed as valuable. And is your potential advantage to leverage that trend going to come from being a cost leader, differentiating yourself, in other words, becoming more boutique or more specialized, or focus? What's the focus of your business? A lot of folks say, well, it's all about the customer experience or customer focus. That's great. Choose it. But I'm suggesting you look at the trends that are going on there right now and determining whether or not that is the right strategic focus at this point in time. And what Porter would tell you is go all in. Commit to these things. Now, I'm gonna call for questions now. Thank you. I've been getting a steady stream of comments here. Thank you. You're a very interactive group that makes this a lot of fun. I'm looking for questions right now on anything I've talked about. If you'll start typing those in, I will come back and I will get to as many as I possibly can. And then I'll do a little wrap up. But I got to talk about a few things. Oh, and I've got 3 approaches to forecasting revenue in 2018. Let me share with you the approaches to forecasting. Let's get you started on forecasting. But in the meantime, if you have any questions about what I might see going on in the world, if you want some validation on some of the trends that you're seeing, how you apply some of these things, shoot me a question in the Q&A box, and I will get to those. So let me sidestep a little bit, do a little promotional work, as is my right to do. It's my webinar, AV Matters, which is now in its 12th year, and the newsletter is moving into its 12th year as well. We're going to do some exciting changes, and I want you to know about it because you're a big part of this. This webinar exists because of the AV Matters experience. This audience exists because of the AV Matters experience. In 2018, there's going to be more workshops. AV Matters is going to promote and sponsor the workshops, which I'm going to put on, along with the folks that I help bring in to do that. We've got a couple of seminars that we're going to put together. We're going to do new webinars as well, so we'll do another series of webinars. I've got more sponsor opportunities for those of you out there who are sponsors and are looking for a way to reach this audience of over 5,000 subscribers. Please contact me. We've got some great sponsor opportunities in 2018 that we have not had in the past. We're going to redesign the newsletter, give it a little bit of a new look. The website's going to get a refresh, and the content management's going to get a refresh. So we have a lot of content, tons of videos, articles, things like that. We're going to make it easier for you to search and find what you need to help you understand what's going on in the world around you. And we're going to have an updated Facebook collaboration, which is we're designing a Facebook group where we can have the conversation that we're having right now in the Q&A thread online on Facebook, where all of us are spending probably more time than we need to, so let's at least do some productive work. So that's what's going on in AV Matters in 2018. And I need to announce, and here's the big news for today, is that we have another Jumpstart workshop called The Unfair Advantage that will take place December 5th and 6th here in Dallas. The registration is going to open November 1st. You, of course, will get an email about that, but make a note. This is something you want to get yourself and your team to. But let me tell you what it's about. So The Unfair Advantage, this is a workshop that is geared for anybody who's responsible for generating revenue. I hesitate to say salespeople because so many of you do not identify with being a salesperson, even though you do the exact same thing that a salesperson does, which is talk to clients, take their needs, convert that into a proposal, close it, and deliver it, and generate revenue. That's sales, whether you're a project manager, a TD, a production manager, whatever title you may have taken or been given. If you're responsible for taking a customer and turning that customer into revenue and gross profit for your company, this is a career building workshop for you. Okay? This is 10,000 feet. This isn't the 80,000 foot strategy things that I've done in recent workshops. This is about people who work for a living and what they do. We'll teach you how to communicate more value. We're going to give you some career building skills. I'm going to help you build your pipeline and create your own individualized unfair advantage. Now, here's what we're not going to cover, because everything in this workshop is new. So we're not talking about lead management and selling style and ideation and RFPs and customer buying styles. All of these things that I've covered in webinars and workshops in the past, everything about this is new. And we have a fantastic guest speaker coming in that's going to help us with some very common issues that we have in the sales community in our industry, because most of us aren't really salespeople, are we? We're not sales professionals. We're AV people that happen to sell things. So registration opens up next Wednesday. The pricing is $1,500 for the first attendee, but this is designed for multiple attendees. So add some people to the team, get the breakdown. You'll be able to go to the store for more details. That'll be live probably late Tuesday night if you want to go look at it early. So exciting new workshop. I'm really looking forward to it. We have a great venue. This will be our third workshop there. It's a lot of fun. Great way to network and meet people. and we'll have a big crowd of AV folks. We're only going to talk about how to sell AV, and I don't care if you're integration or live events. We're all doing the same thing. We're selling services and products to a jaded clientele, and most of us weren't born to be salespeople. I'm here to help. I look forward to seeing you. Now, we've got one more webinar this year, and it's what your numbers tell me and why. So in the middle of December 14th, if you've registered for this one, you've registered for that one, so you don't have to re-register again. You'll get the notifications. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to share with you how I analyze a company by looking at their numbers. And what are the common things that I see in their numbers and what they tell me. When I do an evaluation, when I take a peek under the hood, as I like to say, for a new client, I can figure out 75% of how they're wired and how they tick simply by looking at their numbers. So I'm going to share some of those tips with you so that you can look at your business and better understand how your business is doing. All right, and I'm going to wrap up here. And then I've got a few more points for you. So some of your takeaways here, and I'm going to answer your questions, are, sample multiple trend points. Okay, look at multiple things. Don't look at single data points and decide that the sky is falling. And then also examine your own optimism and pessimism, where it's coming from. That first exercise, that introspective exercise we did where you assess things internally in your company and then as far out as your perception of competitors and how you compare to competitors, gauge where you're coming from on that and bring the team together, because you'll find that there's different points of view inside your organization. That'll tell you what you need to work on. So determine from these reviews what you can and or should change. And then, of course, intentional success is always about taking some positive steps to maximize your chances of success. If you will do one thing moving forward, okay, it will be better. Just do one thing moving forward, and if you succeed at that, then you will do the next thing. Don't try and do 100 things. Do one thing well, and then do the next thing. Now, I've got some great questions here. Let me answer some of those because we're doing great on time. So is there a resource to find out more about the affinity groups that you mentioned I'm completely unfamiliar with? No, I don't. I mean, I'm not even sure what the Google search for that would be. If some of you guys would type in the names of some of the affinity groups that you belong to, I will share those with the rest of the folks. A lot of these are geographically based. They may not be open to more members, but you need to take a look at that. I personally work with some associations like ITRA, which is the International Technology Rental Association, CRN, which is the Congress Rental Network. These are affinity groups that are open to members generally worldwide. And then there are networking groups that are, like PSNI or Rental Staging Network, that collaboratively work together to try and develop business. So perhaps a few people will share those things with us. Another question here is, what way would you suggest to explain to a customer why we sell a solution versus a laundry list? Well, we're all consumers, so think about yourself. When you go buy a car, do you go down a list? I want a steering wheel, I want pedals, I want car mats, I want blinkers, or do you buy a car that meets your needs? So a laundry list does not meet people's needs. I talk about selling the what instead of the how. Okay? There's a lot of different hows that will get you there. When you're buying a car, there are tens of thousands of different hows that will put you into a vehicle to get you from point A to point B. What customers are actually buying is a what. Okay? Now, the other thing is that our customers are not experts in the how. If they're asking for you to demonstrate that you're an expert in the how, then you have some other important selling work to do before you ever get to your laundry list. So by the time the customer is asking for a laundry list, we haven't done the valuable selling that we need in order to sell a solution. So go back, stop, say, hey, I think we need to stop. I think we need to restart, because you haven't understood what I've been talking about, or I haven't done a good job of explaining what my brand does, because we don't sell laundry lists. And I'll give you one last comment on that. The people who have successfully converted from selling by line items to scope of work proposals simply stopped. They quit cold turkey. They physically kept their salespeople from sending out line item proposals. And then they dealt with the objections those customers have. Because anytime a customer gives you an objection, it's an opportunity to have a deeper relationship or unqualify the customer. So sometimes you need to unqualify. So there's a whole lot of sales training behind the answer to your question, but thank you for asking that one. Anonymous asks about meeting planners putting up with in-house AV, I'm editing as I read, and exclusive pricing. Will hotels continue to support this practice? All right, so we're talking about hotel exclusivity and contracts for services with third-party providers. Now, this has been going on the whole 35 years I've been in the business and back before then. The trend right now is it's become oppressive. I visit with a lot of CEOs in my free time, and I recently came back from a trip where I talked to a lot of folks and this topic came up. My suspicion is that what's going on in the marketplace right now with the hotel consolidation and what certain of the key players are doing, that I think this trend will start to see a little bit of relief in the coming year. But I also will point out that this is kind of on a property by property basis, and the solution is still the same. You have to educate your customers and your buyers about how to read a hotel contract before they sign it. And you need to be more valuable. You need to be so valuable that your customer is willing to go to bat to bring in their preferred provider instead of working with the hotel's provider. But are we going to see an immediate change? No, I think we will see the trend continue where this circumstance increases for a number of years. It hits a peak. There's a point of diminishing returns where hotels are actually making less money as commissions go up because it drives away so much business. And then we get the trend where we start dropping the commissions between the third-party provider and the hotels with the hope of bringing more business inside. This has been going on for years, so I think we're about ready for that downturn, if that makes anybody feel better. Who is the Jumpstart guest speaker? Is it a surprise? Yes. Another question here. Find it interesting that the large mergers and acquisitions have taken place. I don't see AV companies buying IT infrastructure companies or vice versa. Do you see that coming? It seems to me it should be the norm now. So the difference between AV companies and IT companies is what they sell. I think what you're going to see in the consolidation market is the larger AV companies will eventually be paired with rather than absorbed by IT services companies and other services. So it's the B2B service model and the software as a service model. I think the private equity world is going to be mating some of these organizations together, kind of like AT&T and some of the big telecom companies did with security and some of the other services, internet, phone, security, VoIP, bringing all of those things together that were very separate businesses. I think we'll start seeing that, but it's not IT buying AV or AV buying IT. It's investment bankers taking two industries and putting them together. We might see something that looks like the old GE model, but that's just me looking in a crystal ball saying, that's something that could happen. So I don't think there'll ever be a norm, and I think the merger and acquisition that we're seeing is actually kind of normal and not unexpected. And I will remind people who are scared or fearful or expecting for something horrible to happen as some of these big companies. The definition of a big company keeps changing. Now a big company in our industry is quickly going to be $1 billion. It used to be 100 million, but it's going to be $1 billion. And these companies will not explode. They're not going to, fall apart, like a burst bubble. Eventually, they will be broken apart into differently profitable units. And the same thing that happens in the stock market, in the bond markets, and where the financial people put together different financial properties together, and then they break them down and take the really profitable ones and put them in this fund, and put the unprofitable ones and put them in that fund, and then resell them. I think over the next 5 years, after the next recession, we'll see a little bit of that going on in our business. All right, I think I got time for one more question here. All right, so a question, I got a question here. It says, do you have any general thoughts on how a company can add value to their brand by being a solutions-based company and not a product-selling company? Yeah, so the general thought is solutions have higher margins than products. Products, by definitions, are easily commoditized, they're easily definable. There are multiple sources for that. When it comes to products, you're competing with Amazon. Sorry. Solutions, however, we're not buying solutions on Amazon. We're, even Best Buy is not, with their Magnolia services are not necessarily selling the solutions. They're selling a list of products and installation. There's still a lot of value in selling solutions, and the margins are much higher. Success is largely determined by whether or not the seller, that is you, understand that the solutions are more valuable. And where I see companies struggle or falter or stumble is when they commoditize their solutions. In other words, they don't stick to their guns, they don't understand the value in their solution, and they end up selling a solution on price, which is that's just part of a death spiral. Once you sold a solution on price, you're going to sell it again, and then your solution has no value, and in fact, it turns out you're just selling a product. So we have trained our customers to buy products at commodity pricing, and we've done it in the way that we sell. The reason I got on my soapbox about line item proposals all those years ago is because it was training our clients to buy on price. We were teaching them where the prices come from, which prices they should ask about. Every negotiating point that we had became their weapon. We used it as a tool to negotiate. They, in turn, took it out of our hands and used it as a weapon back against us. So if you want to sell solutions, understand that you're selling what the value of what you do is for the customer, not how you did it. All right. And all right, well, there's a couple more questions here. I will probably answer those online on my Facebook page, Intentional Success. If you go to Facebook, search for Intentional Success, ask to join. I'd be happy to accept you. I will answer these questions out there, and you can scroll down and look for that, because I think that'd be a great venue for doing that. So once again, acknowledge my sponsors, and let me give you Forecasting 101. This has been a jam-packed webinar. Thanks for sticking with me. All right, Forecasting 101. There are 3 basic methodologies to forecasting, and I don't use any one. I use all 3, but I weigh them differently depending on the organization that I'm working with. So if you're getting ready to do your 2018 forecast, you start with your 2017 numbers, and you can take, which is your prior year, and you can take that revenue, you remove any outlier business, and then you add in an economic factor. So say, for instance, you had $1 million worth of business this year with no outliers, and you're expecting the economy to provide 5% of growth. Well, then you'll add 5% to $1 million for your 2018 forecast. Now, trust me, that's nothing to write home about. I'm just trying to explain how the economic averaging model works. The sum of the parts model goes a little bit deeper. So instead of looking at the macro of the entire year, okay, you look at your recurring projects, and many of you, particularly in the live events world, somewhere between 50 and 80% of your projects are recurring, and then you take the average of your non-recurring projects and use the economic averaging formula for that. So take your non-recurring projects, remove the outliers, add your economic factor, and there's your new revenue number. Then you distribute it according to the timing that's normal for your business. And the third methodology is the zero-sum methodology. So in zero-sum, you identify all the sources of revenue, plus the average monthly pickup. That is the sources of revenue that you never anticipate. You know, it's the difference between, you know, what your month looked like on the 1st and what your month looked like on the 31st. That's your pickup, the things that just fell out of nowhere. Oh, to answer the question online here, an outlier is something that's abnormal. It's not part of a trend. For instance, if you have that one big project, if you're a $4 million integrator and you had $1 million install last year, that $1 million install is an outlier. It's not your normal business. If you're a live event company and you're doing $4 million a year and you have a $600,000 show, unless all the rest of your business was $500,000 to $600,000 shows, that $600,000 show is an outlier. A non-recurring event will probably be an outlier if it's large. Okay? A one-off customer might be an outlier. So something that's out of the norm. So if your company is more transactional, I'm going to use the economic averaging model. If you do a lot of box sales, a lot of rentals, okay, economic averaging is going to be the best indicator of your forecast. If you're a diverse company, in other words, you have a lot of solutions-based selling, you have some product-based selling, you know, some of your business is transactional, some of it's relationship-based, then I'm going to use the sum of the parts because it captures both of those things and weights them accordingly. And if you're all project-based, and this is a lot of integrators, if you're completely project-based, then I tend to go with zero sum. And I identify the sources of the revenue, which means I need a lot of confidence and strength in my pipeline. I need to know what my pipeline is and where that business comes from, who those customers are, and what they're likely to spend next year. I'm going to add those things together. That's a zero sum. I start from zero and add the sources of revenue, plus a little bit of monthly pickup. You know, we know that, yeah, there's stuff that just kind of falls out of the sky, and we can guess what that number is based on history and add that in. So those are the 3 types of forecasting I do. I hope that's useful for you. I'm going to look at all the questions you guys have sent in. It's been a great crowd. I will try and answer these online, or I may put together a document and put it in with the slides, because I love your questions, and feel free to email me afterwards, and I'll be happy to answer you directly. So once again, thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks for your participation, and happy selling in 2018. And don't forget to look for the announcement on the workshop. It'll come out next Wednesday, November 1st. Take care. Bye-bye.